what's up you guys, Jack here. So today I'm going to be showing you guys how to make a build reset button on Fortnite Creative. What inspired me to make this tutorial is the BHE 1v1 map. Any Fortnite Creative public lobby I join, I always see this island, and it's a really popular island. So I always thought BHE was a type of clan or something. It's actually a person. He actually has a YouTube channel. YouTube channel will be in the description. You can check him out. Now this island is very popular, and the reason why it's very popular is because of this reset button. Go ahead and click on this button and it resets the builds like so. And this tutorial will show you guys how to build a button similar to this, so that anytime you build, you can have a build reset button that resets the builds like so. All right, so now we are in my island. This is my 1v1 map. It looks pretty impressive, right?
What is that?
Yeah, really, this is just a test map. I just want to test out the mechanics for this build reset button. Click on the button, the builds reset. Another thing I have added, there's another feature. There's actually a button right here, and you can actually hit that so you can reset builds. And you can reset your builds. Pretty cool. All right, so I'm gonna reset this island. We're gonna actually build like a 1v1, a legit 1v1 island. All right, so I totally forgot, this is not a how to build a 1v1 map. You guys are here for the build reset button.
Sounds like we need a time lapse. Let the time lapse begin.
Bruh. How in the world did that happen? So I kind of overdid it. Now that I have a map, let's make that build reset button. All right, so I'm gonna find somewhere where I can place all the devices, and it's gonna be away from the 1v1 map. So first things first, go ahead, go through your devices. In devices, find button. We're gonna place this down. All right, so now that I have the button, I'm gonna go into the settings. I'm gonna go to when interacted with, transmit on no channel. I'm gonna set this to channel 100. So right now, I'm gonna keep this button here. Later, I'll bring the button into the 1v1 map next to the two ramps. Next, we are going to go to sequencer. With the sequencer, you can place it down. I'm going to bring it out here. I'm going to set length to 0.5, so it makes it really small like so. Then I'll increase the height. The height will be 2, like so. Another settings you have to change, set start sequencer. When receiving from, you'll have this set to 100. So when the button is clicked, it activates the sequencer because both of them have the channel set to 100. Next, what we're going to do is go back to devices. We're going to take the trigger. With the trigger, you can place it down right in the sequencer. So with this first trigger, go to the settings. Time scan trigger, we're going to set this to 1. Delay, we're going to set this to 1 second. And when trigger transmit on, we're going to set this to channel 1. With that, go ahead and copy it, place another one right next to it. The next trigger, we're going to go into the settings. The settings we're going to change is enabled on game start. We're going to turn this to disable. Next settings, enable when receiving from. We're going to set this to channel 1. Final settings, when triggered, transmit on channel 2. So to explain to you guys what happens when the sequencer activates, it activates this first trigger. Once the first trigger is activated, then the second trigger can activate again when the sequencer goes off a second time. What you do next to have more button clicks for the build reset button. So we take the second trigger, we're gonna have grid snap 16, and we're gonna lift it just above the first trigger, like so. Then we can take the first trigger that we placed, copy that, lift it up just like the other trigger, and it'll look just like that. Next, what we're going to do is go into both of these settings. This is going to be more of like a repetition thing, so you're going to have to do this over and over again. The more times you do it, the more times you can click on the build reset button to reset the builds. We're actually going to go all the way to channels only just to make it easier on us, and this will actually save some time. So in channels only, we get to see all the different channels in this trigger. We can also see the options that we changed. We changed enable when receiving from, and we also changed when triggered transmit on. All right, so what we're going to do with these options, we're going to change both of these options by 2. So right now this enable when receiving from 2 times, so it'll be set to channel 3. Same thing when triggered transmit on, it's set to channel 2, so I'm going to bump it twice and it's going to become channel 4. Next trigger, and we're going to set enabled on game start. We're going to disable this. This is very important. If you mess this up, you're going to have some issues. We're going to go into channels only, and same thing from what we did before. We're going to change enable when receiving from with 2 points. So enable when receiving from, this will be channel 2. When trigger transmit on, bump it twice, it becomes 3. All right, so to explain to you guys what's happening here, we're actually just duplicating all these triggers. We're also changing the channels on it. What we do next is we just keep on copying it, change the settings, bump it up by 2 each one. 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. Make sure you don't mess it up like what happened there. This is actually a creative glitch. Sometimes this happens. You can actually see that it added another point even though I only clicked it twice. So be sure to watch out for that. So that was actually a glitch. Make sure that you have the settings correct. Same thing, copy, bump it up by 2. Rinse and repeat. If you need to, you can always fly. And you can just keep on copying the triggers. Again, you just add 2 points to each trigger. All right, you guys, so I built 52 triggers. For every new trigger, I added 2 points to the settings. You can actually add more triggers if you want. The more triggers, the more button clicks that you have for your reset button. But I'm gonna stick to 52 triggers because I think that's good enough. Next, what I'm gonna do is take my last trigger, which is channel 52. I'm gonna take this trigger here and I'm gonna place it just above this here. So this channel here, I'll change the settings and I'll bump the settings by only 1 point. Channel 52, when trigger transmit on 53. Now the reason why I have a final trigger, this final trigger will actually be a mechanic so the game ends. It will let the players know that the build reset button is out of charges. So the round restarts. So next what we're going to do, we're actually going to place these devices that are in front of me. I already did it prior, but I'm going to go ahead and restart and show you guys how it's done. All right, first go ahead, make a trigger. Go ahead, place the trigger. In all options, all I'm going to change is activate on game phase. I'm going to turn this to game start. So this trigger activates at game start. When trigger transmit on, I'll set this to 70. We're going to equip the timed objective also in devices. Go ahead, place it next to the trigger in the settings. We're going to change timer label text. This is the message that pops up with the countdown. I'll type out of build reset charges. Round will end. Next, timer label text. I'll set this to large. Urgency mode, I'll have this disabled. Next option, start when receiving from, I'll set this to 100. Disable when receiving from, set this to 70. When completed, transmit the channel 90. So this timed objective gets disabled at game start using this trigger. And when the sequencer activates 53 times, this last trigger enables the timed objective. So after this trigger, the next time someone clicks on the button and activates the sequencer, this timed objective gets activated. Next, what we're going to do, back to devices, we're going to get the class selector. Go ahead, place that next to the timed objective. In the settings, we're going to set class to switch to. We're going to set this to 2. Option, change player class when receiving from. We're going to set this to 90. One class switch, transmit on 91. Final device, we're going to go and select the score manager. Place that in the settings. Score value, we're going to set this to 1. Time sync trigger, set this to 1. Activate when receiving from, we're going to set this to 91. So in order for that round end mechanic to work, we got to make sure these settings are on. Total rounds, you got to make sure it's more than 1. I'm going to set it to 100. Also a very important option, score to end, we're going to set this to 1. All right, so there is the mechanic. So the game ends once you're out of charges in your build reset button. Next, what we're going to do is set up the explosive device. In devices, go to explosive device. I'm going to set up the settings. Health, we're going to change this to indestructible. Blast radius, change this to 5, which is the max blast radius. Player damage, we're going to set this to 0. You don't want to take damage when this blows up. Structure damage, we're going to set this to 2000. Knockback, we're going to turn this to off. Play audio, we're going to have this to no. Visible during game, we're going to have this to no. Collision during games, we're going to have this to off, so you can actually go through it if it is placed when the game starts. Play audio, we're going to set this to no. Next option, explode when receiving from. Our first trigger was set to channel 1, so this explosive device will be connected with the first trigger, channel 1. So to briefly explain to you guys how this works, if you don't already know, this is the build reset button, and we're going to go ahead and bring it to the 1v1 arena. But when the game starts, you can click on this button. Every time you click on this button, it activates the sequencer. The sequencer activates the first trigger. Then the first trigger activates the explosive device. The explosive device will be at the 1v1 ramps, and it will reset the builds in a 5 square radius. When the explosive device gets activated, it gets consumed, unfortunately. So what we'll have to do is actually duplicate the explosive devices and change the settings so it has a different channel every explosive device. Every time you click on the button, the sequencer goes off and activates a new trigger. If you click on the button enough times, you'll reach the max amount of explosive devices. Then we'll have the final trigger that ends the game with these devices over here. Alright, so now that you understand the devices and what they do, make sure all the settings are correct. We're going to go and take this explosive device and set up the 1v1 arena. Alright, so what we're going to do is take the explosive device, we're going to place it in the middle of the 1v1. Alright, so while I'm holding the explosive device, I have options on the left side of the screen. So drops, I'm going to have this set to off. Grid snap, I'm going to set this to 2. So I'm going to place it in the middle of my 1v1. Next, I'm going to lift another one up and place it just above the other one. So this first explosive device, I have it set to explode when receiving from, set to channel 1. You can actually have the tabs set to channels only, it'll make it easier for you. So the second channel up top here, I'll set this to channel 2. I'll take this, I'll copy it, then I'll place it just in the first one, like so. Rinse and repeat. Explosive device, the second explosive device, I'm going to change the settings just by 1 point. This will be set to channel 3. I'm going to copy it and place it down here. Again, channel 4, adding 1 point to the channels. Channel 5, copy, place. Channel 6, copy, paste. Channel 7, copy, paste. And you're going to keep on doing this for the amount of triggers that you have. I have 53 triggers, so I can place 53 explosive devices. Little tip, make sure it's highlighted when you change the settings. Make sure that you're selecting the right explosive device. 52. Last one, 53. The one up top, you can go ahead and delete that. And there we go, explosive devices have been set. Next, what we're going to do is take the button and we'll set up the buttons. Alright, so here is the button. I'm going to have grid snap set to 8. I'm going to try to make it as similar as the BHE map as possible. I can even enlarge it. There's a bunch of different options on the left side of the screen. I'm going to copy both of them and I'm going to bring them over to the other side. And there you go. Buttons have been placed. Alright, so I think I'm ready to test it out. 90s. Oh, he's cracked. Oh, the builds are insane. I messed up. Bruh. Then the builds reset. Alright, so now that the build reset button works, you clicked it a few times and your builds reset. We're going to make sure that the end game mechanic works. And to test out the end game mechanic, we're going to go to the trigger next to the timed objective. Is activate on game phase. We're going to turn this to none, so that the timed objective never gets disabled. Alright, so we're going to test it out. Alright, so what should happen is the first time I click on the button, these builds should reset, but we should also get a message and a countdown for the round to end. There we go. Out of build reset charges, round will end in 10 seconds. There we go. Alright, so we're going to change the settings back to its normal state. We're going to set activate on game phase back to game start. So when you test it out again, the game should act as normal. So now you have 53 times you click on that button to reset your builds. After that 53 times of clicking on the button, when you click it a 54th time, it will activate this timed objective and then the round will end. Now what if you want to shoot a object that resets the builds, like what I showed you earlier on? If you want, I'll make a video on that. I'll ask for 100 likes in this video for that tutorial. But yeah, you guys, hopefully you guys enjoy this video. Leave a like if this video helped you guys. Subscribe for new content like this and, content from me. Use code JackjackHD in the item shop if you want to support me. And hopefully you guys got your build reset button working. If you haven't, make sure you look through the video and make sure all the settings are correct. Channels are very important on Fortnite Creative. because it allows you to activate different things. So make sure your channels are correct. If you guys got your build reset working, let me know in the comments. I want to see how many of you guys got your map working. And yeah, you guys, I'll see you guys next time. Take it easy, guys. Peace.